What you're watching right now is the most lethal weapon on the battlefield of Ukraine. 75% of casualties are produced by this, but because it's not GoPro footage of the zero line, people don't want to watch it or learn about it. Well, this is a Mavic 3T. This is the job that I had in Ukraine with the 130th TDF, which is where this footage is coming from. We're watching Ivanivska, which is the village that you're watching right now, that's right outside of Bakhmut. And there's one road that connects Ivanivska with Bakhmut, which you can see here. So the enemy comes from Bakhmut, and they flood the area with infantry, but it's slowly by two-man teams. And then when they finally amount enough forces over a couple months, with enough artillery preparation on a target, they move in to gain the ground. They can't do it just by two guys. Most of the time though, they're killed en route. And that is our main job as a Mavic pilot, to support the infantry holding the line by attriting the Russian reinforcements, making the long trek to the zero line. This is the background behind keeping the front line stable against a much larger adversary. Usually right when they kick it off, coming from Bakhmut to Ivanivska along that road, we catch them with flashlights on, we catch them carrying diesel to go and power the jammers, and that's when we start eliminating them. Most of the time, they are killed en route and even run away, but other times they succeed despite tremendous casualties. We're talking about 50%. Now, they like to move during nighttime mostly, but usually dawn and dusk. That's when us drone operators switch to a different type of drone, or we're done with our 12-hour shift, so they like to move during that time. And at nighttime, of course, the drones, like us, can still find them with thermal imaging, but they can't be seen by everybody and their mother as they make movements. Now, one of the problems is that they don't have night vision equipped the normal infantry, so they struggle to conduct large-scale assaults. And the infantry in Ukraine on both sides are mostly just placekeepers, as a scared man in the way of any assault that might happen. Most of the killing is done by artillery and drones, and if the infantry survives that back-and-forth bombardment until there's a squad level at least to make an assault, they can finally move up and take what's left of the position ahead of them. Oftentimes, those infantrymen are there for a month or two, too far forward to safely move back, injured, starving, eating rats, and drinking their own piss, or a large enough force comes in and pushes with you, like I mentioned before. Like I said, about 50% don't even make it to the most forward position without being hit or killed. Now, as for the recon job, which you're watching us do right now, it begins with us setting out the drone with a new battery, about 2 kilometers, dead reckoning to the area just outside of their jammer zone, which is in the middle of Ivanivska. And then we'll hold a place to survey one sector of the battlefield, as the commander gives us his intent, but other times he'll have us rozvika, which means reconnaissance, and we'll be zooming in on different MSRs, different buildings that we know that are occupied. We'll zoom in through roofs. We'll try and find the enemy actively, but it all depends on the tasking. Most of the night, the movement by the Russians is limited to the very front line, the very zero line, or the very rear entering Bakhmut. So if the AO is clear, we'll be told to rozvika, like I said, which will scan for targets rather than have a perfect view of the battlefield with overlapping surveillance, showing the commanders in the talk the layout of the front line. Anyway, once we're given that rozvika command, we'll start testing the waters. We scan from MSR to MSR, we'll scan areas that we know that they're hiding in the buildings and the basements underneath, and we'll even push up further into the village to see if their jammers are working. And oftentimes, most of the time they're not, because they ran out of batteries and gasoline long ago. But other times, the Russians will surprise us by turning on the jammer randomly, right when we're over Ivanivska, possibly for a movement or just random, and we'll get caught in the middle of that jamming bubble, and we'll lose connections for minutes. Sometimes we'll lose the drone and it'll crash into the field to the right of us, or other times we'll regain connection 2 minutes later and we'll have to find our way back because our battery's almost dead. But it's almost always worth the risk to look straight down on the buildings to find movement through the holes in the ceilings. This is a very typical frontline village in Ukraine, by the way. Nothing but the steel structures and a couple bricks cemented to them standing. But it doesn't matter so much. The Russians don't move out from the basements until a plan is set. A maximum 2-minute run into some shelter ahead of them is what they'll do. They're not going to be doing large assaults 2 hours in the open. You're going to die. Now, the question you might ask is, why not bomb every standing structure? Why not send FPV into every single basement? Well, first of all, they put up blankets in front of the shelters just like us, and they sandbag the entrance so that even if a mortar lands close to it, the shrapnel will not enter the blindage. So why not larger bombs? Well, we do. Large drone teams like the Baba Yagas come over and bomb targets, but it's mostly done at the very zero line where there's a lot of action. And whenever that zero line Russian position is eliminated, a couple more from the second line, which we are watching as Mavic pilots usually, come in and replace them to keep the pressure on. It's all about pressure and momentum. The only way to finish the war is to push. So both sides still need infantry. And also, the jammers do work. They'll work usually, and they can take out very expensive large drones, which are not handed out like candy like a lot of people think. You have to remember, this is one section of the front line out of thousands, and this is one night out of thousands of nights that the Ukrainian war has been going on. We have to have enough equipment and logistics to keep us going the next day, so we can't be sacrificing everything for a couple kills. This is just one night, and during that night, there's plenty of ways and time to knock out drones. So use cheap FPVs, sure, but FPV teams are one of the most cumbersome units that you can have on the front line. They need like 10 bags at least, full of batteries and drones and munitions and their own personal kit and water and food. And most of that stuff is only used once. And if you're not careful, you can go through half of your supplies of FPVs in a single night when you're supposed to be out there for 5. And the other problem is line of sight. You have to have line of sight in order to get a direct hit on a bunker. The best way to do that is to be closer to the front line. Now, as you've heard me say before, the front line is not like this anymore. We're 2 kilometers away from the Russians and we survey and bomb them. Now it is separated by 10 kilometers. The Mavic teams are pushed back 6-7 kilometers. FPV teams similar or even 10 kilometers. If you get closer, you're gonna be stuck there for a month or 2 without drones. So although it might be more effective for your hits, it's only for a couple days and then you can lose a couple FPV operators along the way. So that's all I wanted to say. I want to show you guys the most lethal weapon on the battlefield, a Chinese Mavic drone. Still today, that is the most lethal. FPV teams cannot operate without this Mavic. Artillery cannot operate without a Mavic. We do not use binoculars anymore. We have TRPs, and the surveillance drones seen by the commanders will tell them where the enemy is at the specific moment so they can lob a couple mortar rounds that way. Or sometimes those Mavic teams are dropping VOGs and they'll drop 1 or 2 at a time and get multiple kills a night. And that adds up very quickly in one single deployment. One of our guys had over 80 confirmed killed or wounded in just that section of the front line alone during one single deployment. And that is one team, one dude who's the pilot. It's insane. So anyway, I hope you guys learned something. This is one of the more boring jobs you can have in the battlefield, but for myself, I loved it. I saw the importance of it and I felt like I was really having an impact. Plus I get to see the battlefield without being too close. I hope you guys learned something. I'm sure you guys did. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.